Hi there, I'm Richard Hill, the host of eCom 1, and welcome to episode 169. In this episode, I speak with Mike Turner and Krisi Smith, founders of Bird & Blend, a brand that here at the agency we're pretty familiar with, and we just had to get them on the show. You know, a very engaging story that's driven by sustainability and mission. I hosted both Mike and Krisi on the show, and we stepped through them overcoming some quite interesting obstacles over the many years they've been in business and integrating nearly 20 stores into a very mission-led journey. And of course, so much more in this episode. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to this podcast. Now, let's head over to this fantastic episode. Hi guys, how you doing?
Not bad, thank you. Thanks for having us.
How are you?
I'm really good, actually. I'm sitting here having a sip of my gingerbread chai, which I thought would be quite apt for this episode.
And that's the truth as well, right? It's not fake product placement. You actually are.
Actually, this wasn't bought yesterday. This has been on the shelf for many months. We're ready for a refill almost. So looking forward to having a good chat. But I couldn't decide between the Earl Grey crema or the gingerbread chai. But the gingerbread chai seems to still be up there for me.
So I think it'd be here. I think because it's everyone's feeling all warm, aren't they? Or trying to get warm and cozy.
Yeah. It's that time of year. I would imagine you've got a little spike on that sort of those sort of tones at the moment.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I think it'd be great to kick off if you kick off, Krisi, and sort of introduce yourself to our listeners and how you got into the world of tea and e-commerce.
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Krisi Smith, and I am a co-founder of a company called Bird & Blend Tea. And Michael introduced himself, but he's my other co-founder. And we started the business together 11 years ago now, which in some ways feels like a long time ago, but in some ways doesn't feel that long ago at all. And we specialize in creating really unique blends of tea, so using ingredients from all over the world, and our kind of, I guess, reason in business and the things we're passionate about are creating really great experiences, either for our customers or for our team, and making a really positive impact on both the communities around us, but also the people that we employ. And I guess that leads a little bit into why we started the business 11 years ago. You know, personally, I didn't know what I wanted to do as a 20-something, and was kind of bumming around a little bit, tried out a lot of different jobs, and got a feel for what I didn't want to do in my career, and perhaps work for some businesses that I thought didn't do things in the right way, and was led into tea via that route. I think we're a little bit different because we didn't get into tea because either of us were mad tea fans or, you know, trained in the tea industry. In fact, neither of us had any qualifications in tea or business at that time, or e-commerce. Yeah, we've got that really classic startup story. You know, just the two of us had to learn everything in the early days about marketing and e-commerce and coding and employment and P&Ls and all the things you need to learn. You know, pack tea in our back bedroom. That sort of like classic startup story. But 11, not quite where we are now, 11 years later. But yeah, that's a whistle stop tour, I think, is to kind of the why and the start of Bird & Blend.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I think we'll come back to you there. But I love the sort of you know, the starting in the bedroom, you know, sending that first order, obviously deciding what to sell, you know, and then did it work, and then obviously is it 11 years plus into the journey, obviously knowing that you've got, you know, I think 17-18 retail stores later, and obviously, you know, huge e-commerce platform as well. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So as Krisi said, I'm the other co-founder of Bird & Blend Tea, and I think Krisi's given an intro into who we are and what we're about. I guess in terms of what the two of us do, Krisi's tended to focus on. She had the vision really for the company and built out the brand and what we do, and has taken a lead on the digital side, which is perhaps more the side which is most interesting to your listeners, where I've tended to focus on kind of the operations and the retail and the financial side of it. So that's kind of how we've worked together over the years.
Yeah. I think that's always we find that quite a lot when we're talking to, co-owners or business partners in businesses. You've usually got these quite different characteristics that work very well. And I'm sure not without the odd heated moment every now and then. Maybe in the early days, obviously you probably know each other very, 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 very well now. So yeah, I think, I've got sort of the chap that works with me in this business, been with me sort of 15, 16 years. So he's used to my madness and some ideas and whatnot. But I guess before we get into some of the Q&A more so 11 years ago, you mentioned that, you were sort of trying a few different things. I know before we jumped on the call, we talked about very, very briefly, backpacking and traveling, and that type of thing. And then, I know we do have quite a lot of aspiring e-commerce. I've got two older teenagers that are in the trenches trying to make money online and whatnot. And my son yesterday said to me, "Right, I'm going to take a year off after my A-levels." I was like, "Oh, okay. Are you? Is that what?" All of a sudden? Yeah. But I thought, okay, let him do what he wants to do within reason. But obviously, back then, 11 years ago, what would you say was one of the sort of defining moments that sort of really sort of steered the ship in the tea and in the direction that it is in now?
Well, because I think tea wasn't the starting point for us. So the two of us had worked various crappy jobs. I think had come to the kind of realization that work is such a big part of your life. You spend so many of your hours of a week focused on what your role is. That actually was a real potential to have an impact on people's lives by trying to make that bit as good as possible. I think it's fair to say for both of us, before that kind of realization came, we weren't necessarily thinking that we would be going into businesses. We were kind of interested in, both of us we've met doing politics, we're kind of both interested in that sort of area, and maybe might have ended up thinking about NGOs or charities or something like that. But I think it was that realization that actually work can provide opportunity to people and can have a really big impact on people's lives within the business, as well as people on the other side of the counter, our customers, wider society. So that was the kind of realization. Tea almost came next, but we looked around and we had, I don't know, Krisi, 20 different business ideas, probably 3 or 4 of them which went anywhere. 2 maybe which made any actual, not actual money, but a couple of quid. And then before we fell onto kind of tea as one which we thought was a real opportunity to fit in with that, why we wanted to exist, we could kind of align the product with that.
Yeah, so it wasn't tea, it was the driver. It was the type of business and the type of, sort of community and the way you run a business and the way you treat your people and the way that you your day-to-day operate, creating something that you want to be very much, passionate about, enjoy. And then tea came a few ideas, a few maybe failed ideas later, or a few, yeah. We've all been there.
And tea became the tool that we used to give that journey, and that that's kind of stayed at the very heart of it. And that doesn't mean that the tea isn't, we're not focused on the quality and that sort of thing. Huge amount of effort is put into make sure the quality, our excitement, everything's there. But that's because that's part of the story.
Yeah. So obviously, as you said, that sort of piece around the sustainability, specifically as well, was sort of the top of your list right from the beginning. And stepping forward, 11 years, how important has that been? Obviously that was a key driver at the beginning, but obviously step forward now, stepping back and looking at that, how key has that been to your success, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because although we had written down at the beginning the things that were really important to us, and sustainability was on the top of the list, we weren't able to actually implement, produce products and kind of implement our sustainability goals, or even set sustainability goals that we felt were good enough until years into the business. And that was quite difficult to kind of acknowledge that in the early years of business, or when you're wanting to scale a business, you do have to sometimes sacrifice some of the things that you can't run really quick until you've got, reach and money in the bank and etc. So although we always tried in the early days to make sustainable choices, I think we did business in a sustainable way as possible for a business our size. But it's only really been over the last 4 years where we've been able to really explore that, and we've had the money and the reach and the resources to really double down on that and it not be just doing the best we can, but actually pushing the boundaries of being a sustainable company and being a company that others would look up to, and trying to change the industry and packaging and things to have a wider impact. So I mean, we just got our B Corp a couple of years ago, which was an amazing achievement. And I think nowadays, thankfully, it's not seen as, a marketing ploy, or, for us, we both personally that was a value that was personal to us, but there were lots of businesses starting at that time where that sustainability wasn't coming into any conversations. And then now, I think we went through a few years of where, like in all marketing agencies and on websites and stuff, it became like the right marketing thing to do, to put something on your green credentials, because people were looking for those in order to make their, buying decision. And I actually think now it's come even further than that, in that we've actually taken a step not to reduce the use or the information of our sustainable credentials across, say, our website and our marketing. We have not like reduced it, but we use it. We don't use it as like a trick to cause conversion. We go into more detail about what we're doing, and we really think that through. And I think it's not seen as a marketing ploy anymore. It's like, well, obviously the business is going to be doing some of these things. And the consumer wants to learn a bit more about it. So I think if there are brands out there now that are still thinking it's okay to just kind of say we recycle our office waste or whatever on their website, like it's just not enough anymore, because the consumers are way more savvy, and I think that's a really good thing.
So it's sort of deeply ingrained, and it just comes across naturally, as opposed to a forced marketing message, that you're pushing all, and push. It's just like, well, if you go to your website and spend some time on there and then potentially become a customer, you'll see as a customer that it's not a forced thing, it's a natural thing, and then start getting different communications from you about, the background and the sort of the ideas behind the brand, the teas, the people, the places, the locations that you have. It comes across. Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Rather than, as you maybe touched on, just sort of ticking a box. Right, we're a B Corp, let's go. Let's just, we're B Corp this, B Corp, the amount of companies that seem to sort of change their actual, name on LinkedIn, for example, then add the B Corp to the end. It's like, well, is that really necessary? Sort of forcing it. Yeah. So living and breathing it. Yeah, it's good. So, obviously as a customer, the sort of the touch points that I've had with your brand, have been fantastic, and I refer to some of the things that that you guys do when deliveries arrive and things like that. But how do you evaluate that sort of customer experience? To obviously, it's a lot of it's about retention, isn't it? I think, and making sure that customers ultimately are become almost obsessed with the brand and come back again and again and recommend, etc. But that goes without saying, but in terms of evaluating that customer experience, how do you guys do that?
I think it's a really interesting question. Ultimately, the biggest way we evaluate it, because we would say that customer experience is what we're all about, would be in the top line revenue. That we believe that the growth in the business has ultimately come from us providing great experiences to our customers. They then go and tell people about it, as well as coming back. Clearly, we'll try and delve into data as much as we can. But I would say that experience is such a difficult one to measure that it's quite easy to get pulled off track. And sometimes we'll find team members kind of almost getting lost in the detail of that and need to pull them back to, if we're growing, it tends to be all of the KPIs move in the right direction. But the ones which we would look at in particular, retention. If our retention's dropping, if we're not getting second, third orders, then we've probably got something wrong in what we're doing at the start. We do surveys. We do NPS for the on the online side, and so we'll do that. Of course, there's customer feedback. We'll track how many tickets we're getting into customer service on a weekly. That's reported on a weekly basis as a percentage of how many orders that we've done, which again will tend to trigger if we've got a problem, I would say, rather than necessarily indicating that we're being great. And those are two different things, which I think sometimes people mix up a little bit. Reviews are a little bit more of a reliable one, particularly because we don't massively push people to do reviews. We allow people just to do them if they want to do them.
You do request them though after they've purchased after so many days, weeks. You request a potential review.
We'll request product reviews. I don't think at the moment we do jump around what we request at different times, so it could be wrong at the moment. But I don't think at the moment we'll request Trustpilot and that sort of thing. So I always think, well, how often do you get such good service from a company that you think, I'm going to go to Trustpilot, look them up, go on and say, this was brilliant. It has to be really good. It's one thing clicking a link from an email saying, yeah, it was good. It's another thing doing that. In the stores, we likewise, we do similar things, but we add on, there's a little bit of mystery shopping and that sort of thing. We'll add in there, but I know your listeners are more focused on the eCom side, right?
I just wanted to introduce you very quickly to our sponsors, Pricing. Now, Pricing is a competitor price tracking and monitoring software that can dynamically change a product's prices on all sales channels. They work with brands such as Samsung, Sony, Suzuki to increase their online revenue. Now, if you run Google Shopping, which I know a lot of you absolutely do, this software is absolutely key to accelerating profits. One of the reasons I recommend Pricing to my clients is because you can find out your competitors' pricing and stock availability all in one simple to understand dashboard, giving you a huge competitive advantage. Now, if you have any inquiries and questions about this software, or you're ready to get cracking, we have worked out a very, very special deal for our listeners where you can get a free month's trial and then 25% off for the first 3 months. Head to ecom1.com pricing and complete the inquiry form, and we will connect our listeners to the Pricing team. Right, let's head straight back to the episode. I guess something I'm intrigued by, hopefully you might be able to give me some insight, is knowing a little bit about the brand and your type of industry. I've got quite a few subscriptions with different companies in similar. I'm not going to say other brand names, but we're big coffee and tea fans at home in the office. We've got 20 plus people here, and obviously a family back at home, so we've got quite a few subscriptions coming and going, and obviously lifetime value. And some of the subscriptions I've had for 5 years, so bi-monthly, so times, what's that, 6 times 5, can't do the maths, 30 orders as opposed to a 20 quid order. 20 quid order is now 30 times 20 quid. So lifetime value obviously is massive. I think that's a given. But is there any sort of insights or tips you could give our listeners around sort of deeper segmentation with your lists? I think you guys use Klaviyo. I think that's a bit of a guesstimate because I was just looking at the tech stack on your website. But is there anything around sort of deeper segmentation? You talked about NPS and segmenting. Are you doing sort of, some real deep segmentation that could give our listeners some insights into sort of potential ideas that they could look at?
I think, to be honest with you, over the years, we've kind of just, when I said, in the early days, I literally did the classic Google courses on how to learn about the, MailChimp and whatever in the early days. And we just did the basics, the basic segmentation. Well, let's not say basics, foundational segmentation that I believe every e-commerce business should be doing, which I'm sure everyone listening would know what those were. And then it's only really been in the last couple of years that we've got to the size where we've been able to recruit and employ kind of specialists in those areas. Pre-COVID, so 2019, 2020, it was still, our eCom team was also our brand team, which was also our product team, and it was. And now we have an e-commerce department with a head of digital and a specialist on Klaviyo and a specialist, and an analyst and things like that. And I think, my opinion of it is that what I try to do is just remind people when we're talking about or discussing because we are very omnichannel. Like, we've got the retail across our stores. We've also are in other people's stores as well, and digital, and very active across non-sales channels as well, like social media, in events in other people's places, corporate events, all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of subscription, there's a lot of strings to our bow. And because we're such a creative company, we're always discussing kind of new things we want to try, whether that's product development, certain offers, different things. And I think the main thing I would say as a tip is just every time and it's difficult when you're trying to grow and everything's going fast, but every time you do something, make sure that there is a way for you to segment the group of people that are doing that so that you can track what they're doing over time. And my second tip would be, don't just look at the Klaviyo data, like see if you can look at it across the other platforms you use. So I'm a big fan of actually reading what people say. So don't just look at the data points, like pull out a few of the customer profiles that you've managed to tag as part of the wider segment and go and read some of the things that they've maybe said. Have they left a review? Have they emailed your customer service team? Can you pick up the phone and ask them a question? So combining both the quantitative and qualitative. Is that right? I don't know. My jargon's rubbish. Do you know what I mean? Don't just read the numbers, because it's quite difficult to get a bigger picture on that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, sort of ears on the ground, like listening to what's happening rather than, pure numbers. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, totally. Speaking to the customers, listening to the customers, getting ideas, just a few tweaks, potentially, whether that's, flavor tweak, a change, an idea. I didn't realize that whatever was said in that review, we can add that in. It's like almost like creating a series of FAQs that you can then add back in potentially to, the website, into the flow, different flows, campaigns. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is if you've done something, you've tested something or ran something a year before, and then you're coming into planning for the next year and you want to put some budget behind it, and you can't make a case for, well, how did it go, other than you can see that it brought in revenue. Like, I would want to know more, more than just bringing in revenue and a percentage of new and returning customers before signing off a larger amount of spend on it. So as you're getting to bigger and bigger spending numbers, I think sometimes it can be, and bigger budgets, it can be tempting to just kind of be less vigilant. Like, oh, well, we've got money in the bank and, we've got more people and we're more detached from it. And, but actually you can fall into the habit of not properly checking if something is worth the time.
Yeah. Getting quite comfortable. We're not quite sure maybe why, but let's just keep doing that thing. Well, hang on. If we start and pause and put some time into it and, and go deeper on that thing. Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. So jumping into the tea for a minute, obviously I've got a few. Sorry, Mike, did you want to jump in there?
I think I'd add another one in terms of the segmentation, which is that there's obviously so much focus on it at the moment, and there's so many clever things that you can do, and a real kind of trend to trying to move to this, groups of one and everything totally personalized, that you can, again, get quite lost in that. I think it's quite important that, it's important to use as much as you can, but to scale that with the needs of the business. And you meet some people who actually their business isn't turning over a huge amount, their mailing list isn't that huge, and yet they're running 40 different segments of their database, and they're putting in the time, or worse, they're paying an agency to be doing all of the stuff with all of those different groups. And you're thinking, well, you might be getting great data on each of those groups, but if you step back and factor in the amount of time and effort that's being put into that, this isn't work. Start off just with one, over time split it out. And I think getting that gradient right of adding in more personalization, this until AI comes along and does it all for us, of course. But at the moment where it's still, you need to pay humans to do it, I think you want to get that conflict right.
Yeah, spending the right amount of time on the problem is, I think that's the curse of a business owner potentially, or when you're close to the coalface, spending a day on a £10 an hour problem if you're not careful, and there's a 10 grand an hour problem somewhere else you should be working on probably. Yeah, that's the problem, especially in marketing, isn't there? There's about 15 hats you need to wear. But yeah, I suppose stepping back to what you said previously, as I know our listeners will resonate, where quite often starts out with a one-man, two-man band, with an idea, and all of a sudden, fast forward however many years, and then you maybe get your first hire dedicated to marketing, and then we have some sort of tailwind off whether that's whatever it may be, and then all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 people in marketing. Obviously, you can in those stages start to go a lot deeper, whereas you might have had one person, but then the AdWords expert, the Facebook ads, the Klaviyo, and so on and so on and so on, and obviously everything else. But then you start diving in when you've got, however, if you've got 1,000 people on your list or 1 million people on the list, obviously 1 million people on your list, you've got, you can do some magic with your email quite easily. It's just so surprising, isn't it, how sort of out of the box. I'm assuming you'll have had this journey where, you know, the light bulb will have gone on. Oh, we haven't even got an abandoned cart set up like 5 years ago. You click a button, set that up, and you've just added 10% or whatever it is. You're like, oh my God. Like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I think we might invest in email. Then an abandoned SMS starts coming in, another 5%. And they're obviously easy ones, aren't they? And then, you know, but then it gets a little bit trickier once you've sort of maybe done the first 10 flows that, you know, Klaviyo or other campaigns. But yeah, no, an interesting one. So tea flavors, obviously you've got some crazy interesting flavors. I think I've tried about 7 or 8 now. I'm looking at a pink grapefruit on my desk now. There's one there, pink grapefruit. We've got the gingerbread chai. I think that's all else we've got. We've got the tea from the hood. I do like that. We're not too far from Sherwood Forest, sat here right now. But how do you come up with these ideas? You know, how do you sort of come up with the different flavors? Have you got is there like an official person that is a tea creator, or is that you guys sitting around on a Friday afternoon, or how's that work?
Yeah, well, it's always been me typically. Although this year I'm working with a bigger product development team, but yeah, that's been me mostly. Some of the blends have been through like fun things like customer competitions or team members have named them maybe. So yeah, but on the whole, yeah, it's me that creates the blends. And I think from the start we pretty quickly zoomed in on the fact that we wanted our USP to be that we had a range of teas, and that the teas were all going to be really fun, vibrant, taste great, smell great, use unusual ingredients. And that was the angle that we went for. You know, there's a lot of companies out there that are doing really high quality single origin teas and coffees. There's people that work directly with the growers and perhaps launch a brand with an estate. There are loads of tea companies that do it health, and that's all being done really well. So I very much thought let's see if there's room in the market for a company that focus on flavor first, really. And they're all really colourful, and the thing that we in our store, if you come into one of our stores, we've got our tea wall. So there's 100 flavours on the wall at any time, big jars. So it's a bit like being in a sweet shop, and you get to kind of explore the range. And there's decaffeinated version, caffeine-free teas and oolongs and fruits and herbals and all sorts, as well as your more classic teas. So if you come into one of the stores, you get that experience. Team member will help kind of you find a couple for you. One of the things I like the most that I overhear quite a lot is that people say things like, oh, you're the tea company for people that don't think they like tea.
Because you've got everything. You've got every imaginable.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I hate tea, but I like, oh, well, we've got a flavour of tea that's very similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can end up, it's just so versatile because, you know, if you come into the store, you could end up with an iced strawberry lemonade, which is no caffeine and no sugar and tastes like a fruity, you know, almost like a pop or something, a soda. Or you could end up with a chai latte or a matcha latte, you know, or you could be traditional and have an English breakfast. So we cover all the bases. But on that topic, the trickiest thing, the two trickiest things that have come as a fallout from choosing that as our USP, both of them are to do with marketing growth, eCom, all that side of things. The first one is that it's actually really, really hard to replicate the service and the experience you get in a physical store online, because in store you have a human guiding you. It's fun. You hang out there. You get the experience. It's magical. There's 100 tins. Online, it's a nuisance. So that's been the first problem that we've not yet managed to solve, but it is. And the second problem is that because we focused in on this fun flavour element, we call it tea mixology, we basically created a segment in the market that didn't exist. So when it came to trying to build out paid media marketing, that sort of thing, even customer profiling to some extent, you know, there's nobody Googling rhubarb and custard tea, you know, or, you know, it didn't exist. So we had to take a step back and be confident that we could sell a new proposition first through eCom, yes, but through other customer touch points, so that the world of tea got opened up a bit more.
So are you testing those flavours maybe in the stores first before you then go all in on the ecom side?
No, everything goes online. But I think what I meant more was we knew that, up until about 6 or 7 years ago, all the shopping through, or most of our ecom was a customer that had already had a touch point with us somewhere else. Sorry, a user, not necessarily a customer, but they were brand. They knew the brand in some way. And so when we've come to try and grow, and this is key to, really scaling the business as we have done the last couple of years and want to do into the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, is we have to build up that new digital customer base. And so finding the ways to go out digitally and attract new customers that do not know the brand, never heard of a strawberry lemonade tea, really confused, don't think they're interested, is really tricky.
Yeah. It's like cold teas, that's not something that I don't think like a lot of people don't know. Well, people I'm sort of involved with and my sort of ecosphere, cold teas is not something that I think is very well known, but when you talk about 100 different teas and you're spending time all the time developing these different areas to give you that USP, I think for our listeners, it's absolute gold, gold dust to be thinking like that, because that's your massive differentiator. It's the brand. You're known for this, tenacious sort of exploration in tea and trying things. Have you seen the new? I can just imagine. I haven't been into one of your stores, but I can imagine walking into that 100. Wow, it's like a kid in the candy shop if you're a tea person, and then if you're not, it's like, well, you're going to find one that you like. So it's not like it's a no-go. It's, I'll try it. And, blimey, that's surprising. And then to try a different one. Obviously, translating that to the e-commerce side, more challenging. But I think in terms of our listeners, they should be thinking like that USP for them, their brand, because, obviously most markets are very, very crowded. Having that differentiator, having that USP is absolutely key around the brand. And I think it's obviously something you guys do so well. With me having that, I've got a strawberry lemonade, a morning kick, an Earl Grey cream. I know was it a builder's tea? I think I haven't got that one, but I saw that one. I think that's quite a popular one, isn't it? No matter what you're interested in or what flavors or the sort of things that you're into, you're probably going to resonate to something and try that, and then become, a customer. And then you've got the subscription there ready to. I'd like to jump into the subscription a little bit, if that's okay. So. Any sort of tips to our listeners around sort of adding subscription if they've maybe not got subscription in the business?
I think Mike and I might have different opinions on that, so we could give you both of them maybe.
Yeah, please.
I think, so speaking with my opinion, so not on behalf of Bird and Blend, I think subscriptions are really interesting. I think they get talked about a lot. There's a lot of buzzwords, and I think 3 or 4 years ago, especially with companies wanting to scale, get investment, PE investment, that sort of thing, it was always, are you a subscription company? For the obvious reasons. So I can see why that business model is super valuable, and some people do it really, really well. But I feel like it has become a bit of a buzzword in terms of every business needs to think about having a subscription if they want to grow and if they want to have a good e-com site. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I know that a lot, if we're talking about a recurring delivery of something, I do appreciate that whole way that a customer has started using the internet to have a recurring delivery is booming. But it still takes a lot of brand connection, marketing, effort to get an individual to not go to the big, Amazon or whatever and be bothered to get everything else on subscription from there and then come and find us on the internet and set up a subscription with us. So actually, I still think that, unless you're going to be on one of those big platforms offering it that way, if you're going to have a subscription on your own site, you still need to back it up, because you still need to get your customers to fall in love so much that they're willing to get that set up. It's completely different with, some of the amazing box deliveries, like we do we call it Tea Club. So it's a curated box every month. And they're really interesting and obviously great gifting potential. And there's some really cool brands doing that. But at Bird and Blend, it's tricky because we had an interesting conversation about 6 months ago when we were looking at our subscription statistics, and I can remember saying they'd gone up, I think, or they'd gone down, one or the other, and I can remember saying, like, is this actually a good thing or a bad thing? Because at Bird and Blend, people will check out with 10, 12, 13, 20 different tea blends in their basket and spend 50 quid, want to try all these different teas. And then they might do that 3 or 4 more times in a year. And then they might go, oh, I love you so much, I want your curated box. So we need to know whether or not we want that action to happen before we celebrate it. Would it actually be better for the customer and for us for them to continue to shop in individual purchases? Do they spend less if they're on subscription with us? Do we want to push people to be on a subscription box immediately? Is it actually reducing their ATV and their experience of the brand to be on a subscription? So I think that's my opinion on it, but will probably have a different angle or look at it a different way.
No, I think I'd agree. I think it's an area which has been overhyped, and we'd kind of jumped into it before it got overhyped, and it works really well for us. I think the result of the overhype is that a lot of people have kind of lost what subscriptions are really good for. What are subscriptions really good for? They're really good for replenishing stuff which you can't be bothered to stay on top of, right? So I have a subscription for like dog food, which actually illustrates the point of over ordering, because I have 2 bags of dog food in my very little sink next to me, and supplements, because I know I'm just going to need those the whole time. They might as well come. So for a certain customer group, and for us, you referenced the Builder's Blend earlier, there are certain customers who drink that Builder's Blend every day. They just want that to turn up. But I think what then happens was this movement driven by it becoming very trendy, people talking about it a lot. In particular, a lot of the sources of funding talking about it a lot and saying, hey, well, if you're an e-com business, if you want to raise some cash to invest in fundamentally buying customers, you need to be showing recurring revenue. And you get these businesses which aren't necessarily perfect as subscription businesses, kind of backfilling it in, which worked at a time, but now you have customers who are tight on money. They're not just going to leave, clothes subscription. I'm thinking, what they're called, the guys who Stitch Fix, who have now exited the UK market. How many people were leaving that on? Again, talking from personal experience, I quite like those, the various different recipe boxes there are. Well, actually, I don't want one every week because my diary's all over the place. Funnily enough, that's why I don't have time to go to the supermarket. And it's a bit annoying every week I need to go in and skip or whatever. I just want to go in and say when I want it and choose what I want, And I think that actually that can pull you away. And does it balance out? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a few bits there, isn't there? I think it's not straightforward. If it's a simple, right, the same thing every month, that's in its simplest form. But with 100 blends, you're, like you say, potentially hindering the fact that they're not trying other things. Whereas previously they were doing 3 big orders, trying 10, 15 blends, bigger orders, and now we've got them on subscription for £15 a month or whatever. It's trying to get that balance, and
of course with eCom, bigger orders are so much more profitable. So by splitting out, somebody who, if they're doing it manually, might order 4 times a year in bulk, that's a lot more profitable than paying shipping 12 times out to them.
So you're an advocate of subscription, if this is right, but obviously in the right way. You've got to be careful. It's not just right, we want everyone on subscription, because it's not that simple. That's then, in that example, that's maybe stopping or reducing the average order value in certain segments, because they're coming in buying the 10, 15 blends at 50, 60, 70 pound orders as opposed to the 15, 20 pound subscription.
Yeah, I think what we agree on is we're advocates for the right channel for the right customer.
Yeah. No, great stuff. So 11 years in, it can't have been plain sailing, month in, month out. I think that's the reality of any business, that regardless of industry, regardless of economy, regardless of, 2 founders working together and getting on every day. I'm sure there's been some challenges along the way. Maybe is there a time where things were really tough, back was really against the wall, that you could maybe step through, if you don't mind, and how you got through that period or that situation, a specific thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly been. I guess you asked two different questions there. You talked about founder dynamics, and there's certainly a journey there. On the journey of us building Bird and Blend, the two of us have got married and divorced. So there's certainly some extra stuff there. But on the other side, you're kind of I think the main bit of your question around time when back's been against the wall. The particular one which resonates with me was the start of COVID, when you had that period over a few weeks where you really didn't know what was going on. I was actually out in the US at the time. I was working from the US, so I was ending up having daily calls at 3 or 4 a.m. my time with Krisi on what was going on in the UK. With me saying, it's all fine. Out here, everything's fine. I think just people from the UK getting worried about nothing, which probably wasn't the most useful thing to be hearing every day. Then came back, and we had a situation because, the bulk of our team are out in our stores, and we had a period of, discomfort with teams being in, trying to balance that with actually paying the wages, followed by the government pushing people not to go out, but not actually announcing a lockdown. So seeing revenue drop, followed by lockdown. So revenue on that channel, which at the time was 60% of our business, just cut out completely, but with nothing yet in terms of support. And it was probably about a 5-day period where it became clear that we were going to be having a significant hit on revenue coming in. I think it was a question mark on whether we do all of our fulfillment and that sort of thing ourselves. So there was a question mark on whether we could continue to operate our website. But at that point, we were still taking revenue from the website. But no support yet announced. And I think that was the biggest one in terms of stress for me of backs against the wall of, what we actually ended up doing was emailing our team slightly before the lockdown saying, when you lock the doors tonight, close down the store in a way that you're not sure when you're going to be going back into it because we've decided we're going to shut them. You will be paid this month. However, to be blunt, we're hoping that by next month we will have figured out a plan, and we will keep you updated.
Yeah, but we're not sure. Yeah, really. Yeah,
and that period, of course, then furlough was announced and eased the pressure somewhat. It took away that immediate, how the hell are we going to make sure our team can keep having food on their tables question. So that's the biggest one in terms of backs against the wall for me.
Yeah, tough times. But then I guess in the eCom then went stratospheric almost. That's probably quite an extreme word, but...
Well, it then led to different challenges. So yeah, our eCom picked up. We were well placed for it because we'd made the decision some time before that we didn't want to be majority stores. We wanted to have a balance between the two. So we'd actually had just started investing. We just started recruiting into that team. We'd actually just signed off a new website, which we built over the COVID period, but it meant we were already in building stuff when everybody else was starting that project, so a bit of a head start. But we kind of went through a journey of different challenges. So the next challenge, there was an uptick online, and we had Krisi kind of madly, we were still on Magento at that point, weren't we, Krisi? So madly trying to make sure it didn't go down, as Magento likes to do. And then myself and the team who I work a little more closely with tried to deal with operationally how we were going to do it. Global supply chains had crashed. We had stock levels in our warehouse for what our usual online was. We had stock out in our stores, which was just, luckily we have a long shelf life, but was, moving to, right stock, wrong places.
Did you sort of redistribute that back into the e-commerce then? Did you sort of go and grab a lot of that store stock and moved it into your sort of e-commerce fulfillment?
I rented a van and I drove all around the around the southeast collecting stock.
Yeah. Store by store, just
because that was a time when we couldn't ask someone else to do it. It felt unreasonable to say to someone, "Can you drive up to London and visit 3 stores?" So I went and did that. But also how we were in a small location doing our fulfillment. Some team members were desperate to work. Some didn't want to come to work. It wasn't COVID secure. That's a phrase which we've all forgotten about. But, we shut down our warehouse for one day. Actually, our team were just fantastic. We closed all operations. The three we call it back ops, but the non-retail operational managers who run our production, our warehouse and our fulfillment came in and they said, we don't want to shut. So why don't the three of us, our ops director and me, spend a full day rejigging this whole workspace to make it safe for people to come in. And we then shifted to having 2 shifts a day, different setups physically to try and allow people to be spaced out, and then trying to pull as many team members as we could who are in our Brighton retail teams to work in fulfillment so that we had enough people capacity to keep up with it.
Mm-hmm. Crazy time, obviously, taking each day by day, each day at a time, but obviously some fairly bold decisions having to be made. And in the moment, you're not sure is it all going to open up tomorrow, or are we going to get, government going to announce X amount of funding or no funding, or a lot of very, very uncertain times. But obviously, managing the people firstly, and then obviously the commercials of the business with how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands sitting in stock. But so you had so was it more sort of the timing was that you'd already got the new website in the background? That just happened to be around the sort of when COVID kicked in, the move from Magento to Shopify, that was already in flow, was it?
Yeah, I mean, we had the contract all signed off and everything. We used an agency to help us. So that had been done, but the actual getting the new site fit for purpose and everything just hadn't been done. They were having problems on their end as well. So we ended up, just 3 or 4 of us ended up kind of literally manually, sorting through every single page and project.
Living on the side, the back end, getting it all. No, great. I think that's very relatable. I'm sure most people listening obviously had interesting times. Was it 4 years nearly? I think it was in March, 4 years. I've lost track. I think it is 4 years, isn't it? In March. Was it 5? No, 4, isn't it?
Yeah.
4, yeah. I remember. So we were sitting here and somebody said to me, "Oh, have you heard that such and such? Your happens to own an agency has sent everybody home because of this thing called COVID." I'm like, "What? What's that about?" That was, and then 4 days later we sent everybody home. And then it was pretty madness. Yeah. Well, great to have you on the show, guys. I like to finish every episode with a book recommendation. Do you have a book that you recommend to our listeners? Maybe Krisi first.
Well, I'm a huge dystopian sci-fi fan. Yeah, so I think probably try to think about my favourite one. My favourite author is Ursula Le Guin, and I've just read The Left Hand of Darkness, which The Dispossessed is also brilliant. So I'd recommend those. And I'm reading something completely different. I can't remember the author's name, but I'm reading a book at the moment called My Year of Rest and Relaxation.
Oh, that sounds like my cup of tea.
Yeah, my friend brought me as a joke for my birthday, but actually it's not what you think it is. It's a really, really, really good book.
What is it about, drinking tea?
No, it's not. Well, I thought it might be, but it's not. It's about a character who decides to take a year off from life and just tries to sleep for a year. And as you go through the book, you realise that there's perhaps more to why that has happened, and it's kind of it's interesting. Let me find the author's name while Mike does her.
That sounds really interesting. Actually, that's something. I will get that.
One at the other end of the scale that I love reading, kind of businessy books. So I was trying to think of which one I'd recommend. And I've just finished this one, The Advantage. Which is a really good one for where we are as a business at the moment. Because it sounds very boring, and some of your listeners will probably think it sounds terrible, and some will probably think it's really good, but it's about organizational health. So kind of at the point where we're putting in a senior leadership teams, trying to get them working as a really strong team, communicate values and mission and that sort of thing more clearly for our business. It's all about that, and really, really good. And then another one which I have recommended quite a lot recently is called Shoe Dog. And it's the story by the founder of Nike. And I love that because you read so many stories of these businesses, and the story is, we got this right, and we got this right, and we got this right, and we got this right. And what I love with that one is that a lot of it is him saying, we're 5 years in and I'm still I've still got my full-time job. Our cash is so tight that we're probably breaking the law in order to pay our bills.
The realities are,
and you can look at it and you can say, that's it. It's a little bit more real than some of them. So I love that.
No, that's great. I've read the Shoe Dog, a great book. The other one I think will definitely resonate with our listeners. Sort of building that leadership team, that sort of empowering the team, etc. Right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. For those that are listening, want to find out more about Bird and Blend and you guys, what's the best way to do that?
Follow us on social media if you want to. It's Bird and Blend Tea. Come into one of our stores. That's the best way to get the experience. Like you said, we've got 19 stores up and down the country, including Scotland and Wales. You can find out where the stores are and shop on our website, which is birdandblendtea.com. That's probably the best ways.
Thank you, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to speaking to you again.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast. So you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.